We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Families have a lot going on. Let Ollie help manage the mental load with new cognitive help supplements for everyone 4 and up, like delicious Lolly Focus Pops or Lolly Mellow Pops for kids. And for parents, try 3 new Brainy Chews to help you focus, chill out, or get energized. Find these cognitive health buddies for the whole fam at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Welcome, everyone, to the G-Note Podcast. I am your host, Jason Spicy G. Goldman, and I'm a Grammy-winning record producer, arranger, and musician. I've been a music professor at USC for over 22 years, and I am most known for writing and producing music for the iconic crooner Michael Bublé over the past 2 decades. This is a podcast for musicians who want advice and strategies on navigating the music industry. If you're not a musician but a music fan, I promise there's plenty in here for you as well. On this pod, we talk all things music. On today's pod, we are talking about how to get a music teaching job at a school. Let's go. All right, welcome back, everyone. As I mentioned, today we're talking about how to get a music teaching job. I want to start with just saying that I did not have any intention originally of going into teaching music. It didn't even cross my mind in college. I knew I was a player and I knew I was a writer, and that's what I did. While I was at USC doing my master's, I think it was like my last semester there, I was also in the Thelonious Monk Institute of Jazz as well, which is a performance-based institution. I had asked Shelley Berg, who is now the dean at the Frost School of Music in Miami, and he was the chair of jazz studies at the time at USC. Shelley is one of my biggest mentors and always had a lot of faith in me as a musician and a band leader. And so I owe a lot of my music education career to him. And he led the big band at USC, and I had asked him if I could be his TA for the band, his teacher assistant. And he said, look, he's like, you can't be it officially, but you can certainly kind of unofficially be a TA. So I helped him with the big band. You know, I'd either write music or I'd conduct rehearsals and, when he wasn't available, and I would just kind of watch what was happening and study. And then when I graduated the semester after, he said, hey, we really need someone to teach a saxophone masterclass. Would you be interested? And so I said, sure. And then the next semester, he said, hey, there's some extra saxophone players that want to study with you. Do you want to do the masterclass and lessons? And I said, okay, cool. And then after that, it kept happening. It's like he'd be like, oh, there's an ensemble. Do you want to, there's an ensemble that's available. Do you want to conduct the ensemble? And so I would, of course, just keep saying yes until finally I was, just teaching at USC more than some of the, professors who had been there a long time. This turned out to be one of the most important things that happened to me in my life because teaching has been the most stable thing that I've had as a musician. And it's allowed me to do a lot of different things in music, take risks, right? Try to go for things that don't pay money yet. If you've listened to the pod before, you know that I'll just do a chart, which again takes time. But in order to do those things for free and take those risks, I need to be able to make sure I could put food on the table and have a place to call home. Because gigs and tours can be very unpredictable, it's really important that you have a steady flow of income so you don't have to worry about if you're going to be able to eat or pay rent. This is definitely a musician's plight. As many of you know who listen to this podcast, we talk about revenue streams coming from gigs, tours, commissioned works, and also teaching. And music teaching jobs have become vital for the vast majority of musicians. They provide stability. In many cases, they provide healthcare, benefits, retirement packages, and of course, they provide a steady paycheck. They also allow you to turn down gigs that you just don't want to do. Not everyone wants to be playing tons and tons of wedding gigs or bar mitzvahs or whatever. So in order to turn down those gigs, you have to make sure that you are still able to meet and pay all your bills. So before we get into how to get the job, the teaching jobs, let's first describe the different types of teaching jobs in music and what's needed in order to get those jobs. So for the purpose of this episode, we are not talking about private lessons. And private lessons are obviously really important to be able to teach. But for this particular episode, we're really going to be talking about steady salaried or hourly jobs. Let's start with elementary music teachers. This is a teacher that teaches the absolute beginnings of music, obviously from kindergarten to usually around 5th grade. This is everything from how to hold an instrument to how to make a sound with one. It requires a ton of patience. It's actually really rewarding to watch young people pick up an instrument and be excited about playing it. Believe it or not, I mean, little elementary school kids, they really get excited about playing an instrument and picking an instrument. So it's really cool, but you need patience, and it is quite rewarding, actually. The time commitment isn't crazy in elementary school music teacher jobs. Typically, you're only teaching, roughly an 8-hour day, of course, with lunch. But it's not really as hectic as like middle school or high school, which I'm going to get to. The next type of gig is a middle school teaching position. This is where you're actually starting to teach a large group of musicians. Now, keep in mind, the music is not going to sound great. Remember, these students have only been playing an instrument most of the time, especially if you're dealing with the 6th graders. They've only been playing for maybe a year, maybe 2 at best. But this is actually where a lot of learning happens. You'll typically be teaching concert bands and possibly a jazz band, maybe an orchestra. And this is roughly a 40-hour-a-week job, and even sometimes a little bit more because you'll sometimes have some small music trips kind of scattered throughout the years. So this is definitely a little bit more intense than the elementary school gig. And also, a lot of the middle school music teaching positions also require you to go into elementary schools. They call them feeder schools, and talk about the program, and sometimes even give lessons to the elementary school during class periods. So it does, it's definitely a lot more work, I think, than the elementary school job. The next gig is the high school job. Now, this can be exciting because students are definitely going to be more comfortable with their instruments and definitely more more competent. However, most high schools have a marching band. And marching band, honestly, again, this is coming from a jazz musician. Marching band can be a blast. However, understand that marching band is a different type of experience. It's not, I don't necessarily think about it as this musical experience as much as this like kind of show experience, because it's music is part of what's happening. It's the music, it's the drill, it's the show design. So it's a little bit more of a show experience than a music experience. But typically, high school music instructors are required usually to teach marching band. And this requires a ton of time outside of regular school hours. We're talking about a lot of times 50 to 60 hours a week during marching season. During the regular season, you may not push it that hard, but I can tell you that it's still more than elementary or middle school, right? There's the marching band trips. Marching band rehearsals typically happen after school, for three hours, usually 2-3 times a week. So you're talking about a minimum of 9 extra hours, plus on Saturday is competition. So that's another 8 hours right there. I mean, so it's quite a good deal of work. The salaries can be decent. It just depends which program you're in. But it is a lot. But what you're getting is you're getting hopefully a higher caliber of musician. Typically, you're also teaching upper and lower level concert band and a jazz band to conduct. Typically, you won't be conducting orchestra also, although I have seen some programs that have the just the one music teacher teach that as well. Many also require band directors to teach jazz band as well. And that can sometimes not happen, during the day also. That may be before school even starts. So you'd have to come in even an hour and a half before school starts, like at 7 a.m. That's a real typical thing. So high school in general does require much more of your time. The reason why I'm going through all of the, how much time is because you need to figure out what your goals are and figure out what you're going to be able to do. So if you're teaching a 50, 60 hour week, I can tell you this, you're going to be exhausted, and your particular creative juices, whether it's shedding, practicing or writing music or, trying to play gigs outside of school, you're just going to be exhausted. And a lot of times people who take those gigs, they don't have a lot of time to do some of the outside things that they want to do. So it's important that you know what you're getting into as well. And by the way, music teachers, sometimes it's like, well, they don't get paid that well. I mean, it's decent. I mean, they get a decent salary a lot of times. It's not amazing, but it's certainly nothing to scoff at, really. The final job that we'll talk about is the high-profile collegiate job, and these are kind of the holy grail of music teaching jobs. What I mean by high profile, we're talking about the elite music schools, Juilliard, USC, Frost School of Music, Berklee College of Music, so on and so forth. Those are the high profile college jobs I'm talking about. These are great jobs as they tend to pay decent, especially for the amount of time that you have to be there. Typically, you'll teach there, it could be 3 to 5 days a week. But you're really, most of the time, anywhere between 20 and 25 hours, maybe up to 30 hours, but that's kind of pushing it for a collegiate professor. Most times, with this gig, you're getting summers off, so basically mid-May to mid-August. You're getting December off also. So these can be a nice gig if you would like to do a lot of creative things outside of just teaching. Now, keep in mind, because you're teaching less, it may not be paying you as much as the full-time position at the university or at the high school or middle school or elementary school, but it does provide you that time to be creative. The final job which is kind of the holy grail of music jobs, is the high-profile university or college job. These are by far the most desired positions. And while the pay isn't actually always incredible, sometimes even the city or state schools actually can pay more. But what you're getting is you're typically only teaching between 18 and 20 hours a week. And many times you can get your schedule down to 2 to 3 days a week. You would likely be teaching higher level students with more proficiency, and most have a real yearning to really want to be a professional musician. You also get, like I said, summers off, and with the amount of hours and the schedule, you'll have plenty of time for your outside professional activities. A friend of mine actually equated these high-profile collegiate jobs to what it used to be like to sign a record label, like a major record label deal, because they're just so coveted.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
full-time position can sometimes be really challenging to get, especially at the elite music colleges and conservatories. Remember, these positions also offer benefits and retirement packages, and the all-important thing with the college jobs is a lot of them give you what's called tuition remission for your family. For those of you who don't know, basically, a lot of times these colleges will say, hey, if you're teaching for us, your kid can go to school here for free as long as they get in on their own merit. So that is a huge perk, for those of you who have kids. And sometimes they even have that benefit for your spouse. It may not be full tuition, but it could be like a portion of their tuition covered. So if they wanted to go back to college or something like that, it's a huge perk. Most college jobs, or I should say most non-college jobs, require a teaching certification. They usually do not take long to get, but are usually required. And your salary will be commensurate with the degree level you have also, that, whether it's a bachelor's, master's, or DMA. Most colleges, and I know some of you are not going to like this, but most colleges at this point require a DMA. These positions are very competitive, and they typically will care more about the DMA paper than the actual professional experience. So what I'm saying is it doesn't matter that you've toured with, Justin Timberlake, or you toured with Gerald Clayton. That's not going to matter to them as much as the paper for the vast majority of places that you're going to apply. This is because we have to remember that a lot of the administrators that are hiring, if it's not like a major music school, they're not musicians. So they can only go by really the degree. They don't know a specific jazz person or a specific pop person. They just know, like, okay, this person went through the, all the way to get their terminal degree, the DMA. And so they should be really competent and have the knowledge they need to teach. So kind of keep that in mind as we're moving forward here. While everyone does want the full-time positions, one of the things that you're going to probably start with are the part-time and or adjunct positions. These are really important because they're really your entry into teaching. And while the pay for most of these gigs, adjunct and part-time, is not great at all, it gives you much needed experience, and it will give you an edge over others when you're applying to jobs. In order to get the coveted full-time positions, you need to get experience. And while private lessons, again, is certainly important on a resume, you need to teach a group of students at an institution, and adjunct positions are the positions that offer that. As I mentioned, the pay's not great, but one of the good things about adjunct a lot of time is that the schedule can be flexible with, your gigs that you may have outside of school. Another really important skill to have is developing curriculum, and this is incredibly important. The development of classes, syllabi, and curriculum, the sequence of classes, will give you a huge leg up on the competition, and you can start doing this whether you have an adjunct job. Try to get involved with the school that you're at, work with the full-time faculty to try to watch what they're doing, learn how they're building curriculum, learn how the system works at their particular institution. This is really, really huge and will definitely give you the big leg up. So now let's get into how do you go about getting these positions. For elementary and middle school and high school jobs, I recommend you find a city or town you think you'd like to be in and go to their school district website. This is by far the easiest way to see what is being listed. They're all required by law to post their positions, and they will all run what's called a search. So there shouldn't be anything behind the door or the curtain, so to speak. It's all above ground, and anyone's allowed to apply. They usually will keep the position opened up for probably at least a month, typically. If you're looking for college teaching positions, it's similar. Find the city or state that you want to live in and go to that school's website. But also you have a couple of websites. higheredjobs.com is really good. And the Chronicles of Higher Education, do a Google search on them. And I know that they're also really good about posting things, not just in the US, but literally all over the world. Here's a super pro tip. Read the job description of what they're looking for. I know that sounds weird, but I can't tell you, how many times at USC people just send in their resume and, the position may say we're looking for a sax instructor and they play trombone. I'm like, why are you applying for this? So rather than waste your time, read the description, really decide if you match the description. Applying to a position that you're just not qualified for can be just a waste of time. If they require a specific degree and you don't have that, I recommend you just move on to another job listing. Again, you'll very likely be wasting your time if you don't have the degree that they're requiring, because the school is usually not going to budge on their requirements. And a lot of times, if it says DMA required and you only have a master's, they won't even review your resume. They'll say they don't have the certification. As soon as they see that, that's the end of it. If you feel that the position's right for you and you're going to apply, make sure first that you, again, have the qualifications, and second, you get the best referrals that you can. This is usually the second thing we look for after the qualifications, making sure you have the qualifications, and then who is giving you a recommendation or a referral. Obviously, if you're trying to get one of these gigs, having an inside track would be really helpful. So what I mean by that, if you know someone that works at a school that you want to be at, you should talk to them. Find out what they're really looking for, because sometimes these descriptions can just be general and maybe they're looking for someone that's, that's got a little bit more depth to them. So you try to get the inside scoop. This way it'll make it so you don't waste your time applying for something you don't need to. Plus, the big perk about knowing someone at a place you're applying is that you are almost guaranteed to get your application reviewed thoroughly, because they'll mention, hey, look out for this application to the search committee, and it will be on their kind of list. All applications go through several rounds of review, everyone, because a lot of people want to know how this works. Typically, after a school has closed a position, they will weed the field down to 8 to 10 candidates. So if there's 50 candidates for the position, they're going to weed it down to 8 to 10, right? Meeting all the credentials was the first thing I said, then making sure they have good referrals. Most of the time, believe it or not, this isn't really hard to get down to 8 to 10 candidates, believe it or not. Because again, I would say at least 50% half the time don't even meet the qualifications. Once we get down to 8 to 10 candidates, this becomes the semifinal round. And after this, the committee will usually narrow the field to 3 to 4 finalists, as they'll do like a deep dive on each particular candidate, listen to their music, call their references. And then they'll, like I said, come down to 3 to 4 finalist candidates. And these typically are the people that have incredible resumes or killer references. A lot of my students always ask me, what should they expect if they make the finals? And so I wanted to give those tips to you now. So if you make the finals, here's what typically happens. Usually you will have about 2 days worth of activities, right? They'll typically fly you out a lot of times to wherever the job is. They'll put you up for a night and you'll do 2 days of activities. These activities usually include meetings with administration, several meetings, right? Deans or principals, the hiring committee, the human resources person, if there's a chair of the program. There'll be tons of meetings. And the second, but the most important part of the process is really the teaching demo. Now, typically you will have to teach a class or two, and roughly it could be 50 to 75 minutes of a class. Usually they will have you teach different level students. If they may have beginners and then you do an advanced class. So you may do 2 different levels of classes. Here is a really, really important thing for everyone to listen to if you're going to be applying to positions, because everyone asks me, and here is literally what you need to do. The teaching demo tips. And this is really the secret of it all to me. Number 1, make sure you are organized. And this is something I talk about on this show all the time. Go in there, know what you want to do, and be really thoughtful about how you're going to present yourself and the topic. Have a specific topic you will discuss. I strongly recommend you keep it to one topic. If you bounce around too much, you could potentially lose students, and you don't want to do that. Third, make sure you have a method or system of how to teach it. That's really, really critical. I mean, because remember, it's a teaching demo. You're teaching students who you've never met before, and the faculty review committee is going to be there watching you teach. So you want to make sure that you are, like I said, organized, but that you have a specific way that you're trying to teach something. Make sure the class is engaged. This is unbelievably important. Do not overdo the lecturing. Even if it is a lecture demo that you're supposed to be doing, have the students participate somehow, whether it's asking questions, playing, if it's like a music, performance class. Just make sure that you're just not sitting there talking and forgetting that you need engagement. By the end of the class, your goal should have been met. And it should be evident that your point has been made. It shouldn't be kind of like, well, I hope you got something out of it. It should be that you did get something out of it. And that it was a very clear goal, so that as reviewers, we can see that, and the student should feel like it. Make sure to give a recommended assignment so the students can leave with something to work on. And I know you're not going to be there. You may not get the gig, but this is important, right? Because it's a demo. It's supposed to be like what you would be giving. I recommend you have something to pass out to the class. It makes you look, again, organized and together. So definitely do that. And finally, this is so important. Do not try and wing it. Everyone, including the students and the review committee, can see right through that. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this happen. They don't really have a specific thing they want to talk about, and they don't have handouts, and it's not really organized. This will not turn out well for you. I can promise you that. I mean, especially if you're looking to really get the gig, trying to wing it, it doesn't work, and you're just basically wasting your time and everyone else's time. That's there. Folks, these are the real deal tips that you will need to know to get a seriously good job in the music industry. There isn't one job that's better than the other. It just really depends what you're looking to do. But all of these are good. All of them can have good salaries and bad salaries, unfortunately. But this is the way to go about getting it. And it's also the way to level up as well. So hopefully you'll take a lot out of this episode and really try, because again, being an educator at this point in time is vital and crucial to being a successful musician. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today's episode. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this pod so you can stay up to date with new shows, giveaways, and more importantly, the concerts. Come out to Vibrato, check the band out. I promise you're going to love my big band. It's a great time. You can also follow me on Instagram at SpicyGmusic, or check out my website, jasongoldmanmusic.com, to see what projects I'm currently working on and to see when I'll be performing next. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Much love. Peace.